Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Options. I was thinking this morning, I've been at this for a long time. I've been personally engaged with the markets for more than 30 years now. I've been professionally employed within that market space for over 28 years. And I've been involved in the arena of options trading for over 20 years. So it occurred to me, what if I had to start over? How would I learn about options with everything that's available now? It's a very different environment than when I first learned options trading more than 2 decades ago. So today I wanted to put together a 5-step roadmap for beginners for learning options. I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion. A lot of resources out there. How might we pull them together and put them together in an organized way to be most efficient? That's going to be the objective for today's discussion. So buckle in. This is going to be fun. Before we get into that, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody that's chatting in out there in YouTube. Great to see Happy Camper and Eva, PR451, Josh, Gautam, Paul, Frank, Mike, another John, everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. We really do appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. If you're here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the fact, we'll enjoy the presentation, but be aware that you're invited to join us in this live discussion. If you'd like to be here, this is a Tuesday webcast series. We kick things off promptly noon Eastern time. We'd love to have you here as a live stream audience member. And as a treat for my live stream audience members, my very good friend Connie Hill is going to be hanging out in the chats. Connie's going to be addressing any questions that I can't get to just during the flow of the presentation. Thanks for having my back there, Connie. And Connie and I would also like to issue an invitation to everybody listening. If you have an account on the platform known as X, you should be following your favorite presenters there. It's the best place to connect with us in between these live streams. So you can find Connie there at Connie Hill CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. But let's get into this 5-step roadmap for learning options. And as we do, of course, there are risks associated with trading and with investing, so we need to keep those risks in mind. Options carry a high level of risk and are not suitable for all investors. The information here is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or endorsement of any particular security, chart pattern, or investment strategy. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as the sole means of investment research, and investing involves risks, including loss of principal. All right, so here's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking through this 5-step roadmap for learning options. So I'm going to outline it first. Then we're going to go acquaint ourselves with the resources within that outline. So by the end of this discussion, we should have a pretty clear picture of how someone starting on day one, maybe even a 30-year veteran starting over, might learn about options in a structured way. All right. So the very first thing that we're going to do, let's go right to the thinkorswim desktop trading software platform. And I'm just going to map this out. 5-step roadmap for learning options. And I need to make that bold. That a little easier to see for everybody. There we go. Let's widen this out just a little bit, fit it all on one line. There we go. So I'm just gonna outline these steps, then I'm gonna go show how a trader might execute these steps. So number one is to download the trading platform. We need to be prepared. If we're going to be learning about a trading strategy like trading options or trading strategies like trading options, acquiring new knowledge in something as precise as options trading without applying that new knowledge, but that knowledge is just going to bleed out very quickly, very short-term retention unless we're actually applying things. So we need to be prepared to put this new knowledge into action, if only through a practice format like thinkorswim paper money. So that's step number one. Step number two is to read some courses that we at Schwab have prepared just to give a structured introduction to learning about options. Number three is going to be then get some visual application This is the visual learning in the process. Watch some webcasts on the topic. So we learn the theory through the courses. We see the application through the webcasts. Number 4 is to write a plan for each strategy that the trader has an interest in potentially executing. So there are all kinds of different strategies in the realm of options trading. Some are more income oriented, some are more oriented toward rapid growth. But with each one, we need to have a specific set of rules governing the administration of that plan. So writing a plan, and then finally tracking the performance of the plan, tracking the performance of the strategy over time, and learning from that. So we're going to keep a journal. That's going to help us refine the plan over time. So there we go. There are 5 steps. Download the trading platform, read courses, watch the webcast, write a plan, and keep a journal. And then just lather, rinse, repeat. All right, so how do we download this trading platform? I really am starting from day one. So if we're a brand new would-be options trader and we don't even know, how to execute an options trade, well, we need a trading platform. Now, this trading platform that you're going to be seeing me using is called thinkorswim Desktop, and it can be downloaded free of charge from within your Schwab Online account. So we're going to go to Schwab Online and log in. You just log in using your typical credentials, and then right up here under the Trade tab, we're going to go to thinkorswim Desktop under Trading Platforms and execute the download. Now, this is going to provide for us a few potential advantages. Number one, it provides access to trading our real balances. Number 2, it provides access to a mock version, a mock or practice platform known as thinkorswim Paper Money. And that is a great thing for learning without having risk involved. So thinkorswim Paper Money, I think a lot of you out there can really testify to the advantages of having a no risk environment for practicing new strategies as potentially complicated, as potentially risky as options trading. Now, also within the thinkorswim Desktop is access to the education. So pretty critical download here. So we're just going to go to thinkorswim. We're going to click on Learn how to enable thinkorswim, and then we just follow the on-screen prompts. And this is going to download the software to your laptop or whatever device you're using. It's going to create an icon on your computer's desktop that looks like a little splash. So that's your access to thinkorswim. It'll also add thinkorswim to your computer start menu. But you launch thinkorswim, it's going to prompt you for a username and a password, and you just use your Schwab username and password. And down below, as you're logging in, it's going to ask you, are you here to do some paper trading, or do you want access to your live platform? What I would suggest is that we paper trade first with an unfamiliar strategy until the trader is able to make an informed decision whether they're going to implement that strategy ever with their live money. All right. But yeah, we'll log in, and that takes us to the thinkorswim Desktop platform. All right. So that's it. That is step number 1. That has us ready to put into practice any new knowledge that we gain. Put it into practice immediately through practice trading first before moving on to live trading. Another thing that I would definitely encourage the new options trading learner to do is to just go one strategy at a time. As tempting as it can be to try to cram one's mind with lots of new information, and learning about options can be exciting, I can admit to that, but it can be overwhelming, and a lot of the concepts can overlap and blur if we're trying to learn about long calls and long puts, covered calls and vertical spreads and iron condors and calendar spreads and diagonal spreads and so on, all at the same time. So I would suggest download the software, start to learn a strategy, put that strategy into practice, get confident with it, then move on to strategy number 2. So, but that brings us up to the second step here. Read the courses. Now we have 161 people watching. chat in and let me know, have you actually gone to the education tab here on Thinkorswim and read through the options courses? So as you chat that in, I'm going to go to those courses. Now we're going to access what's called the education within Thinkorswim desktop. So we'll go up to education and kind of sounds maybe redundantly, we're going to select education. So that takes us to this page, insights and education. And since we're learning about options today, we're going to go to the options tab. And then down below, this is going to take us to the courses. So we're just going to look through for that keyword courses. So their videos, their webcasts, there we are, the courses. Why am I suggesting we start with the courses? A great advantage of the courses is they are systematic, they are structured, and they're probably more comprehensive than any one of our instructors can deliver in any single webcast. I like that structure. There are important details in options trading that can get unintentionally overlooked in, let's say, a webcast. Myron says reading is boring. I know, Myron. I relate to that. Videos are more interesting. I think that a combination of both is probably the most effective learning approach for a new trader, to make sure that we're covering everything necessary, but not just learning the theory, which a course is great at doing, but also seeing the real-time application of these. So yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But we have 3 courses here. And I do have a suggestion for the order in which these courses might be tackled. And I think they're kind of intuitive. First of all, I would suggest that we start with this one. It says options for beginners, and it begins with some income strategies. Generally speaking, income strategies such as covered calls, cash secured puts, are seen as being some of the most conservative option strategies and possibly among the easiest to learn. So that's where it's going to begin. But go to the course called Options for Beginners first. Once that's been completed, we'll move on to directional options, learning single options and then spread options, combination strategies. And then finally, we're ready for advanced spreads. So, John, you say, can I go over how to get to the courses again? Yes, John. So it's just up under education. Just go to education and then up at the top, click on options, and we just scroll down to the courses. So if it's useful, let's go into one of these courses just so you can see the general outline. I think it's fairly intuitive to move through. There's an estimate for how long it's going to take to complete each course. So my apologies to those that consider written courses to be kind of boring. I can't fault you for that. I think that these are fairly entertaining. And I'm always excited when I'm learning something new. That gives me motivation to continue, especially if it's structured. But in any case, you can just see right here, this is broken out into lessons and into what you might consider chapters within those lessons. So we'll just proceed through from top to bottom. And then down at the bottom, there'll be an assessment, a little quiz to take to make sure that we're comfortable with the progress we've made to that point. And then we're ready to move on to the webcasts, right? So reading the courses, and actually, you don't need to read the entire course. So if you want to get into those webcasts right away, say get in as early as possible. But I've actually created a series of webcasts, 10 lessons. How many of you watched those 10 lessons? These are intended to be a good companion for the first 2 courses here, for the options for beginners, and then for the individual options strategies and the multi-leg strategies or the spread strategies. Myron, you like that? Nice little layout, right? Easy to follow through. But once we've read the courses or starting into the courses, I have essentially a companion piece to go along with that, webcasts that are available on YouTube on our Trader Talks channel. So let's go to YouTube. So let's go to it should be a familiar YouTube page. If you haven't done this yet, make sure that you've subscribed to our Trader Talks channel on YouTube. You can do that by going down the lower right-hand corner right now. Click on the subscribe button, and that only takes a second. It doesn't cost anything. But our YouTube channel is where we house previous webcasts, including this list of 10 webcasts that I've created It's a series of lessons clearly labeled to take that brand new options trader through basically the first 2 courses. Now, it doesn't go word for word with the courses. Instead, it's more focused on specific strategies and the implementation of those strategies. So let me show you where that's found. So you go to YouTube, look for Trader Talk Schwab Coaching Webcast. You can just find it with a quick keyword search. Go to playlists, and then right toward the top of the playlist, you'll see right there, it says start here to learn about options trading, learn about trading options. And if we click on view full playlist, you'll see lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and you can see how these are broken out into individual strategies. Trading options building block number 1, long calls. Number 2, long puts. Number 3, short calls. Number 4, short puts. Then I spend a webcast talking about how options are priced, understanding something known as the Greeks, and then lesson 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10. Just go through those. I think that will be fantastic supplementation to those first 2 courses. And then when we move on to the advanced course, we have a webcast series dedicated to that as well. So if we go back to the channel and we go to the playlists, what we'll look for is the Advanced Options Strategy webcast series. So let's see, there it is right there. Advanced Options. Just click on that and you can start watching those. I do think that it's important to see not only the theory of options trading as outlined in the courses, but also watching someone who's been down this road applying example trades and the management of those trades. Eva, thank you for saying yes. You watched every single one of those 10. Myron, you hadn't heard about those 10 lessons? Bob's in the middle of it. Hope you've been enjoying those, Bob. Cheyenne says, do you cover candles in the beginner's course? Not in the options course, but that would be charting. So if we want to learn about charting, let's see, let's go right up to the top again. Go to the playlist and we have a course. There we go. New to stock charts. Start here. That's where you'd want to go to learn about charting. Now, this is more about learning about options trading. Okay, so download the trading platform, read the courses, watch the webcasts, and then it's time to start writing a plan. Now, within each of the courses, when we've completed a course, let's go back to those courses. I got a little bit, there we go. Go back to the education. As we work our way down through a course, we'll notice down at the bottom, so in this first one, as an example, we'll learn about covered calls, that's an option strategy, and cash secured puts, another option strategy. Both of those are income-oriented strategies. But down at the bottom, here's a resource, Options for Beginners, Income Strategies, Sample Investing Plans. When a trader is out there implementing an option strategy or pretty much any approach to the markets, it's quite common for them to have a governing set of rules that say, this is when I buy, this is when I sell, this is how I trade, this is how I manage winners, this is how I manage losers, and so on. All of that is what we call an investing plan. We provided samples of those sorts of plans here. As I show these, just be aware, these are not written in stone. A trader should always feel empowered to make their own plan, make revisions to the plan that suit their preferred approach to the markets. But as we click on these sample investing plans, it can just show us some of the basic elements of a plan. So first of all, just know that these are really just for illustrative educational purposes only. But as we go into these plans, the covered call sample investing plan, I'll use that one as our example. It outlines the objective. What is the trader attempting to what are we trying to accomplish with this plan? What kinds of stocks might we consider for covered calls? When might we take the initial entry on whatever the strategy is? How much might we commit in terms of maximum risk or position size to a given trade? When might we exit, whether the trade is going well or going poorly? And how might we refine that strategy over time? So it's It's one thing to have a written set of rules that we think we've done a good job outlining, but then in the implementation of those rules, there's a lot to be learned. Sometimes we have a great plan, it works well in our head, and yet we discover over time this isn't going quite as I thought it might. Maybe over the course of 20 or 50 or 100 trades, we're starting to see maybe our entries are premature. Maybe our exits are too late. Maybe I've been committing too much capital to each trade, or maybe I've been committing too little capital to each trade. Little refinements like that can be made if a trader has specific routines to go back and look over the plan and revise it as they see necessary. So those routines might include what are we doing on a daily basis, what are we doing on a quarterly basis to review performance and make changes. And that's, I think, a pretty good outline. Now, I'm not going to go into the specific details of each of the plans. It would be outside the scope of this discussion because some people watching this may not even know what a covered call or a cash secured put is, but feel free to read through these on your own. So Karen says, where were the strategy plans within the education tab? So Karen, they are just at the bottom of each of the courses, okay? So let me show that one more time, just so we know exactly where to find these things. So once we're logged into Thinkorswim, we'd go up to education and then just make sure that we are on the education sub-tab. We've gone to options to access this course. And this one is specifically the options for beginners course. So the course is outlined top to bottom. And at the very bottom, we find under the resources, there are the sample investing plans. So if I were to go to a different course, let's do that. Let's go back. And if I were to go down to, let's say we move on to the directional options, the single options, and the spread strategies, I'll click on that. And as I'm scrolling down, learning through this course, I'm learning about long calls and long puts. I'm learning about vertical spreads. I've taken the course assessment, and down at the bottom are some sample investing plans for those strategies. So here is a short-term trading long calls sample investing plan. Or here is a long call vertical spreads sample investing plan, and so on. Okay, so that's where you find that. So we have downloaded the trading platform, read the courses, watched the webcasts. We've written a plan, but this step, it's tough for me to overstate the importance of this step. Keep a journal of what we're doing. As we're learning, it's difficult to learn from mistakes. It's difficult to learn from successes if we don't have a record of those successes and those mistakes. So as we start with a single trade or a second trade or third or fifth or 10th, as we progress and we get a good history of experience with trading, we can learn from patterns that we see emerging in the way that we're trading. So, for example, if we've traded, 30, 50 long calls, and we observe that, boy, it seems like of the 50 that we've concluded, I got out too soon on 30 of those. Maybe I need to revisit my exit approach within my investing plan. Or maybe on 30 of the 50, we noticed that we got stopped out just before the stock really took off. Maybe that tells me that I need to do a little bit more work on my charting. Lots of little things like that can be learned from a good trade journal. So Myron says, is there some place where we can see some example journals? Yeah, Myron, there actually is. So keep your eye on the screen here for just a moment, because there's just a couple of specific places these journals are housed. So those are found at a specific web address. It's on our coaching page. So here's where we're going to go. Right up here at the top, do you see where it says schwab.com/coaching/webcast? This takes us to our calendar of webcasts that we have coming up. And on that calendar, within specific webcasts, we have links for the journal. So I'm just going to show one just to make it easy, right? So step number one to find these journals, go to schwab.com/coaching/webcasts. Now, step number two is just to go down to the Friday webcasts. So these are previous Fridays. I'm going to go to the one that's just coming up. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom. Even the previous ones would work. But Fridays at 12 o'clock is a webcast series called Trading a Smaller Account, typically taught by Barb. Barb's out of the office right now, so Connie's been helping out Barb. But if we go to that webcast, either one that's already been taught or one that's coming up, if I just click on that, you'll see right here under resources, an example trading journal, right? So Ricebird says journaling keeps track of wins and losses, but also to me has become encouraging. Yeah, can be. Even if we see our balances slipping over time, that's still important information, still something we can learn from, hopefully improve upon. But we just click on this trading journal, and that's going to launch a tool that looks like this. So I'll admit, okay, let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. Is that too small to see? I think that'll still work. But down across the bottom are a few things that I want to point out as we launch this journal. One thing that I really like, there's been a lot of time and effort that have gone into the creation of a journal that's effective, but also a first-timer can use it. So the very first thing is there's some important information to keep in mind about this journal. For example, you should know that calculations for historical profit and loss are provided for illustrative and informational purposes only. So if I put in a trade here, just to show how to put in a trade to keep track, that doesn't mean it's a real trade that just happened. It doesn't mean that I'm saying it's a trade that you should place, nothing like that. John says, wouldn't your profit or loss at the bottom of the monitor be sufficient for a journal? Nope, John, that actually doesn't necessarily keep track of the sorts of trades that have been placed, there are other things that a trader might want to include in a journal. And this one's just an example. Feel free to build upon or build your own journal. But there's an instructions page right here. So what I would encourage you to do before you start using this journal, just go to the top of the page and read down through this. It'll take you a little bit, take you maybe 10 minutes or so. But just know the columns can be expanded or reduced as needed. You can record your beginning balance and additional deposits in the inputs area, the capital area, which is right here. This area displays your current cash amount, the calculation percentage gain and loss, your dollar amount gain and loss, and so on. So read through the instructions here. It'll tell you how to fill out the journal, what the different outputs mean, and things like that. But then we can just move on to the individual journals. So there's one that's just a basic, what's called this Strategy 1 journal, and then one for vertical spreads, combination spreads, that kind of a thing. But let me just go through a quick example of how to fill this out. So for example, let's say we're beginning with a balance of $100,000. So let's just type that in there and let's start trading it. So Vic says, where is this spreadsheet? So Vic, I just showed a little bit earlier how to find this spreadsheet, but just as a quick summary or recap, go to schwab.com/coaching/webcasts. Then go to a Friday, that takes you to a coaching calendar. Go to Friday and click on the one that's called Trading a Smaller Account. You click on that and you'll see it in the resources area of that screen. All right, but let's say that maybe we just bought a long call on Apple. Maybe we just did it a few days ago. So I'll just type in the date here, it's just month, day, year. So let's say we did it on the 25th of 2025. Our symbol is our stock symbol. So I'm going to say this was Apple. Let's say we did one contract. This is not shares. We're talking about options trading. So I'll do contracts. The price per share or contract, let's say it was $1.50 per contract, and there was a 65-cent commission. So what that's doing for us now is it's tracking the total invested, $150.65 on 100 share contracts at $1.50 each. And then if we want to sell it, let's say we close it out. Let's say we closed it out yesterday, 7/28. And we sold that one contract. If there were multiple contracts, we keep track of like partials here. Let's say that we sold it at $2, paid $1.50 for it. There was a 65-cent commission. And this is now going to start to calculate gains and losses. These are things that are not necessarily the ratios are not generated just on Thinkorswim. This is one of the differences when we're using a journal versus using just like your Thinkorswim trade history. But in any case, we can see the percentage gained or lost. So Gautam says how to get this journal. So Gautam, I covered that a couple of times. If let's say life got in the way and we turned away from the webcast for a second, or we showed up a little bit late, that's totally fine. These webcasts are recorded and then archived on our YouTube channel. So just make sure that you've subscribed to our YouTube channel, and you can go to Trader Talk Schwab Coaching Webcast, go to the playlists, and you could just go to the playlist for this webcast series. Now, this one, Getting Started with Options, is more toward the bottom of the playlists. It's going to be right there. You view the full playlist. This is where this is going to be housed after this webcast is over. All right. So back to our example journal here. Experiment with this on your own. One thing I'll point out as we move on to this second example journal. So we have kind of a streamlined version and another one that's a little bit more complicated. Just be aware that for each of these columns, as you're trying to fill it out, you can click on the column heading and it'll explain it to you. So if you're not sure, am I putting in the stock symbol or the option symbol? Oh yeah. What does width mean? Well, enter the distance between the two strike prices on a vertical spread. For example, a spread with strikes of 15 and 20, we'd enter a width of 5, not 5.00 or $5. We just put in like a 5. So anyway, so with each one of these, we can just click on the column heading and it'll explain to us how to fill this out. And then all of this up here will start to automatically populate without any additional effort. Okay. So let's say we're doing the same trade, 725, 25. That was a few days ago. Maybe we bought a long call on Apple. Let's say it's a long call vertical spread. So it's a $5 wide spread. Maybe we paid a $2 debit. Now notice here, credit or debit. There's a little hint here just in the way this is written. A credit is positive, a debit is negative. Or we click on that, it'll say enter the credit of a credit spread as a positive number. Enter the debit of a debit spread as a negative number. Okay, so let's say we're buying a debit spread, a long call spread. Let's say we pay $2 for that. So I'm going to put in a -2. Maybe we did 2 contracts. And it's 65 cents commission per contract. We'll plug all that in, and it does the math for us. Here's the maximum gain of this trade, the maximum loss of this trade, the potential return on risk. And now let's say we're gotten to the back end of the trade. We close it out. We sell that debit spread. So let's put in a closing date again, just yesterday. Let's do 7/28 of 2025. Maybe we sold this for a credit. That's a positive number. Let's say we closed it out for $3. And this now calculates a realized profit or loss. The transaction costs across both sides of the trade, getting in and getting out, realized return on risk. And notice these areas up here that are starting to populate. Average return on risk. Well, we've only done one trade. It was 48.39%. So that's our average so far. We were in it for 3 days, profit of 194.80. This journal just calculates this automatically. So guys, that's just a quick introduction to how to fill that journal out. But that also concludes our 5-step roadmap for learning options. Just to recap, let's look at it one more time. Download the trading platform, read the courses, and as we start to gain new knowledge on a strategy, we can put that immediately into practice through that trading platform, through using the Thinkorswim paper money platform. Watch the webcast. So now we're getting structured education. We're getting practice with that education, And we're seeing people who have been doing this for a long time, putting it into practice and learning more of the nuances of these approaches. We can start to write a plan, and I've shown you how, where the example plans exist, and we can keep a journal of our progress and learn from that. So guys, that's my 5-step roadmap. I hope you found that helpful. I was kind of excited when I came up with this topic this morning. I thought that's a great, that's I like to reframe who I am as I'm delivering these webcasts. And I thought, if I had to start the whole thing over, because it was quite the learning curve initially, lots of resources, but in very, my experience for learning this stuff is way different than yours needs to be at this point. The world has advanced a lot in the last 20 or 30 years. And I just wanted to make it as straightforward as possible for you. So if you found that useful, I hope that you would put it in your calendar to join me each week. This is the kind of stuff we do, getting started with options. So we'll come back again next Tuesday. I'll pick a new topic in this getting started with options series. I have other webcasts throughout the week though, so you're certainly invited to join me there. Let me just say, if you haven't done it, make sure that you're subscribed to our Trader Talks channel. Trader Talks Schwab Coaching Webcast. Just click the subscribe button down the lower right-hand corner. This is where you can find those playlists. You can join the live streams. You can also, here's one thing I want to emphasize today. There are even little short videos, 2, 3, 4 minutes, that you can access through this Shorts tab. Like this one recently by Brett Crowther. Been doing some great stuff. Price, volume, and volatility, all in one stock indicator. This is actually an introduction to an indicator that I explored in greater detail in a recent webcast. So you might want to check out these little shorts if you haven't been doing that already. All right. But another thing that I would suggest is that you follow Connie Hill and me on X. So Connie, thanks for helping out in the chats, by the way. But the best way to connect with your favorite presenters in between live streams is to be following us on X. You can find Connie on X at Connie Hill CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. So this is where I am when I'm in between these live streams. I'm posting things about the markets on X. I'm posting, things that have happened over my weekend. But if you reply to one of my posts, I try to reply right back to you. So it allows for that more personalized interaction. It just isn't available if there isn't a webcast going on. Everybody, thanks for all the thumbs up. Definitely appreciate that. I can see 180 people watching right now. 60 people have already clicked the thumbs up. That's very much appreciated. That's like a pat on the back to your presenter, but it also gives us a boost in the YouTube algorithm. So our webcasts are found by more people, and they can learn things like a 5-step roadmap for learning options. Everybody, go enjoy the rest of your day. I'll look for you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on X, but whenever I see you again, until that moment arrives, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.